Greetings, friends. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and this is MagnifEssence in Motion. Today, this is episode number 15, and our topic title is The Balanced Self. Now, are you ever torn between your inner Spock and your inner Yoda? Do you find yourself overthinking a decision until your brain feels like it's running endless spreadsheets or leaping before you look, only to wish you'd checked the waters first? You know, studies in neuroscience show that decision-making isn't merely a rational process managed by the thinking brain. Our feeling brain, that is the limbic system, is equally crucial. In fact, research from Dr. Antonio Damasio demonstrates that people with impaired emotional processing struggle with some of the simplest choices, even if their logic is perfectly intact. Meanwhile, intuitive hunches often arise from our brain quickly matching patterns before our conscious mind catches up. So when head and heart are out of sync, we really do risk missing out on clarity, satisfaction, and even effective action. Well, today I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Carolyn McGee, an intuitive coach and founder of Sacred Haven Living. Together, we're going to tackle this classical tug of war between logic and intuition and discover how collaboration between the two is a secret pathway to living with more ease, confidence, and authenticity. So please welcome Carolyn McGee to the program. She's got to come in from behind that hidden curtain. There you go. Hi. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you. It is so fabulous to be here with you. We always have such rich conversations.
Yes, we do. And as I was mentioning during our pre-show conversation, you know, it's been several months since you and I were together, and I'm just delighted to see you again and to share space with you. So, first of all, how are you doing?
I am doing really fabulous. It's, I have a long history of working in, the coaching world, in the spiritual world, and as well as the corporate world. So there's those two halves. And I feel like I have really settled into what that meshing is for me personally, because everybody's got their own version of how to balance, the logic and the intuition. And I feel like I've really stepped into mine and opened up a whole new career pathway for me too. One that I've actually done a really good job avoiding for a long time. So it's fun. It's pretty awesome, David. I'm really thrilled with where I am right now.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I like to do, and you've experienced this before, I like to get to the heart of the matter pretty quickly. And one of the ways that I have found helpful in getting there is asking you a personal question.
Sure.
And obviously this topic is important to you, this idea of balance, the idea of bringing the intuition and the rationality together somehow. But I'd like to know a little bit about your story, about why it has become so important. Maybe you can share a little bit of that. I think that would be a great starting point.
Sure, I would love to. So when I was a child, like we're talking grade school, etc., I always excelled in math and science. It was easy for me. It was just one of those things that honestly I didn't have to put much effort into. So I liked it because I didn't have to spend a lot of time doing homework. I just got it. It made sense to me. Probably in hindsight, there was a level of intuition with behind the scenes, but that wasn't a word that was used when, I was back in the 60s and mainly 70s. Anyway, so I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to help people. You don't make any money, Carolyn, if you're going to be a social worker. So I was pushed, guided, whatever term you want to use, by my parents into going to an engineering school. I was good at it. I didn't really like it. It was a lot harder than high school was. And it just didn't light me up. It didn't make me happy. But I was on this path and I didn't know how to I didn't have the support either of saying that there's a different way of doing things. You don't have to be one thing or the other. So I went on, I got an engineering management degree. I started working in corporations. Again, easy for me to do. Did not like it. It didn't bring me joy. After 20 some odd years, I was laid off from this small startup company and still wasn't tracking my intuition, David, but I had this nudge that I couldn't explain that I needed to open my own business. Like I was done with people telling me what to do and then having everything fall apart because it was their way or the highway. So I finally took the highway and I started my own business. And from there, I opened up not only my own leadership skills, my entrepreneurship, my connection with animals, because I started a dog walking business. And it gave me the time to reach out to other mentors, to figure out there's not only one way to do it.
Right.
There's all of these possibilities.
Yep.
And then I became passionate about shortcutting other people, you know, as an engineer, logic, etc. I like to do shortcuts. I like to fit the pieces together so it's easier for other people. So that's what drives me.
That's pretty fascinating. You know, it's funny. I don't know. Maybe I just attract people who have similar journeys compared to me. But I know that in my own life, I had a similar kind of situation in school. I mean, all the math things, the sciencey things, all that stuff was really relatively easy for me. But another thing that was pretty easy for me was languages. I don't know if there's a correlation between, you know, I mean, languages do have I guess, structure and logic associated with them. And maybe that's why it worked out for me. But another thing is puzzles. I love doing puzzles, you know, trying to solve things. And so it was pretty natural for me, you know, I wanted to be a musician all my life, right? And I had this plan. I was going to be a rock and roll musician. And my mom and dad had slightly different plans. They said, "Oh yeah, that's a great hobby, dear. But you know, for every successful musician, there's a million starving musicians." That was one of their favorite phrases. I remember that. And so naturally, I was guided into a more, shall we say, acceptable role in much the same way. And my first pass was fighter pilot. You know, it's not exactly sciencey and engineering things, but you're still solving problems in real time at very high speed. You know, so that part I really liked. Military, not so much. But anyway, you know, it's interesting to me how we tend to follow the direction that is given to us rather than following the direction that's in here. You know, and the word intuition for me, I don't remember ever hearing it used except in the context of woman's intuition. In other words, men don't have it. Although that, you know, no one ever actually said that, but that was the unconscious message that I received. And so consequently, I said, okay, I don't have intuition, no biggie. I'll just keep going, you know, doing what I do. So it's interesting to me that, you know, as we progress through life and we have whatever challenges we have, and, you know, you talked about, you know, my way or the highway kind of thing, and finally choosing the highway. That's a pretty powerful metaphor. And somewhere along the way, I think we all have to make that choice. Whatever that highway is for us, I think we have to choose it, or else we deny ourselves the truth of who we really are. So anyway, sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there. Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
get kind of wound up sometimes.
Yeah, that's all right. And I do think that we get multiple choices to, you know, I'll just stick with that metaphor, someone else's way or the highway, which in my view is really my own life's path. You know, I mean, it's a twist on that analogy. And, you know, we get to choose ourselves all the time. You know, we have major life events, you know, like I could have gone back into a high-tech job again. I mean, that was my fourth layoff. I was finally listening that path was not intended for me. And so stepping into really who I am, I had to make the very difficult choice to leave a dysfunctional marriage because it became his way or the highway. And I chose me. I chose my kids. So, I think we all have these really big moments where we can choose ourselves or choose the guidance that makes us fulfilled, glow, filled with joy. Those are those moments that are so critical and important. And you look back and you can clearly see those paths.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's absolutely correct. And, the thing about, so for me, I'd say the first 50 years of my life was dominated by logic and rationality and reasoning and all that stuff. And I was probably younger than 50 when I finally started doing personal growth work, and I started joining men's groups. And I imagine being in a group of men and they start talking about feelings.
Yeah.
Naturally,
Yep.
I was, oh my God, what's this woo-woo crap that we're going to be dealing with here? But I discovered that there's nothing more important than actually feeling the truth of who you are. And so feeling is absolutely critical. And of course, as we continued with the men's group work, and I ended up doing this workshop in 2003 that really opened me up, that's when intuition started getting introduced into my vocabulary. I couldn't believe it. I actually had men challenging me to trust my intuition. It was amazing. And so that transition really started to open me up, and I started beginning to see who I really am and how I fit in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how just a tiny bit of awareness can shift everything in a moment and put you on another 180-degree shift in your life.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing how there was the signs all the way along, but we didn't know how to read them. We didn't know how to interpret them.
That's
one
right.
quick story about that is I realized, I've got the engineering management background and I worked in high-tech manufacturing, and I could spot something wrong on a schematic that nobody else could see, but I did not know what was wrong with it. And they used to just make fun of me because I'd say there's something wrong in that upper right corner. Like we'd be looking at it. And, these are high paid engineers. And then they go back and they look at and they find something wrong. And, so I had the ability to just sense in without knowing what I was doing. And hindsight, I can go back and see thousands of times that I used my intuition, but I hadn't a clue that I was doing it.
Yeah. Well, all right, now that we're on to the topic of intuition, why don't we, for the purpose of our audience, come up with a definition of that word? Because I think many people have different ideas of what it really is. How would you describe intuition? What does it really mean?
Intuition is my inner voice. It's my inner guidance system. I like to call it my personal GPS. So it guides me to make choices. It guides me in directions. It guides me with people. And the way it resonates with me is different. There's 4 classic ways of receiving information. You see, you hear, or you sense things. I have become to believe that there's a last one called being. You are being in your body. You are aware of everything that's going on around you. You're grounded in your essence, in your body, because we all live and operate through our bodies, every aspect of them. And when you have that grounded energy, then you can filter all of those signals, including your intuitive guidance. And that's what allows us to function at a much higher level than just using something else.
Right. So basically, you know that you know something, and you know what it is but you have no idea how you know what it is you know. Something along that line.
That's claircognizance in a nutshell. It's like
Right.
a light bulb. It's a light bulb that goes off, and you're like, "Oh, okay." But then it fleets in and out so fast that if you're not grounded, if you're not in your body, you may
Right.
miss that little brilliant download, and
Right.
then you just pass on. So yeah, I think for me and intuition, it's being in our body, being embodied, connected, centered, because if we're not fully present, we miss so many of those signals.
Right. And the word intuition, this is another thing about language. Like I said, I just had this natural thing about language. It really means inward learning, and not necessarily learning from an external source, but becoming aware. I think learning is another phrase for becoming
Mhm.
aware of something rather
Yeah.
than necessarily, and it could be remembering as opposed to hearing something for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the Latin root is into something, and yeah, it's into you, processing
Right,
through you.
right.
I love that. And that level of awareness and acknowledgement really shifted things for me too.
Right. Well, I like what Wendy wrote. She says it's a gut feeling that is always right. A
Mm.
feeling, a feeling of a sense that I need to take a step forward or just do something. For me, it's listen and do. That's
Ooh,
interesting. Yeah. Well, okay, the gut feeling is always right. Is that true? I honestly cannot think of a time when I had an intuitive hit on something and it turned out to be wrong. I can't think of a time when that happened. So it does seem to be a true statement that gut feeling is always telling you the truth. It's not lying to you. I think that's a really good observation, Wendy. Thank you for that.
yeah, thank you, Wendy. And I think that's part of the embodiment part, is that when you're aware of your gut, you're aware of your heart and the signals that it is sending you. So you can sense through your body what that information is. And when it's wrong, or when it's perceived wrong, it's because we didn't listen right. So I love your statement of listen and then do.
Right.
I would add a step of integrate into that also.
Yeah, that's great. Now, just to be clear, sometimes you may get an intuitive hit to avoid something, and that's not okay. Avoiding something isn't necessarily the wrong thing to do. So be careful about how you interpret these words. Sometimes that avoidance can save your life, and it can,
Absolutely.
or somebody else even. So you've got to listen and then make the choice, I think, before you actually do anything. So anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, no, I think that's very clear. I know when I was working at corporate, again, I wasn't aware of what I was doing it, but I was doing it. And oftentimes I would get this vision of a back road to work
Right.
instead of taking the highway. And then I'd get to work and I'd find out, there was an accident on the highway. I'm like, oh, I would always say, oh, what a coincidence, because
All right.
I didn't know what was happening to me. But, again, hindsight, you can see all these building blocks and experiences that you've had throughout life that have helped solidify the trust and validity of using intuition in decision making.
Right. Yeah, and I want to come back to that idea of intuition being the domain of the feminine. Uh, I don't think that's really true. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I think that all of us, everybody on the planet, has a level of intuition,
Yep.
and I guess I would venture to say that we also have a blend of masculine and feminine energies within our holistic makeup. So it probably is the feminine side of our essence that is connecting into that intuition. And so if we don't allow ourselves to feel that, then we're kind of denying ourselves a holistic part of who we are.
Yeah, it's all about balance. And, I think back again to doing the math and science, going to an engineering school, which was mainly men back at that point in time. And then I worked in, corporate for a military contractor. So
Right.
it was surrounded by rules and regulations, and, and that can be the toxic male aspect, not the divine masculine aspect. So I was filled with it. I lived it. I made choices from it. And when I could balance and consciously bring in that intuitive information, my life got better. My health got better. I have an underlying health condition, and pushing that energy of the corporate and those, processes, et cetera, very rigid boundaries, was difficult on my health. It was exhausting. And as I started shifting the way I made decisions, the choices that I made, how I was going to advocate for myself, my body naturally healed.
So what I hear you saying is, in the early stages when you were having these health challenges, you were not as balanced as you are today. You were more
Correct.
focused on the logical, rational side of things,
Yep.
and that kind of led to that imbalance, led to some health challenges. What other kinds of things can happen if we're not balanced?
I think we lose connection with a piece of who we are. Because as you mentioned, we all of us are a beautiful combination of the divine feminine and divine masculine. True at our essence, we have these capabilities and these energies that resonate with one aspect or the other. And I view it as a pendulum. So, when I was working in corporate, doing the engineering stuff, produce, measure, 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 I was way over in this masculine energy, and I wasn't even dressing feminine. So I was missing the whole component of who I am. And then when I started opening up to this and, communicating with angels and really doing the animal work that I love, I went kind of way over in the other side. It's like, dismiss this stuff over here. To the point where I forgot a couple of times to pay bills. That was the logical whatever energy. And I'm just like, God will take care of me, whatever. Did not work that way. I still had to put the stamp on that envelope. So, and then it's this beautiful, like, small pivot. I have an old cuckoo clock that has a pendulum on it, and every day it goes back and forth slightly. And if it's running a little bit slower, you have to move the pendulum up or down or faster. And that's kind of the way I look at balancing the feminine and masculine. When you want to be creative, when I'm writing content, creating a class, whatever, I'm a little bit more into the feminine side. It's that creative life force that I really want to tap into. When I'm actually on the website or posting something, well, that's producing. That's the masculine. That, allows it to flow so much simpler. And being able to ebb and flow in those energies instead of trying to force it in one or the other or in the middle, life is so much easier. And that allows my health to be better. Like, I sleep better. I would say that's the biggest thing, is I'm not running around in my head all the time of, did I do this? Do I have to do that? Did I forget this?
Right. Yeah. So, because that's the old monkey mind kind of thing, right? That can happen if, you can start making judgments about yourself because you're not producing the way you're supposed to be producing, or you're not softening your edges the way you're supposed to soften your edges, or, whatever judgment you may have. I mean, it's all bullshit. It really is. It is.
Yeah.
That's the technical term for it, by the way. I think you'll find that in all the medical journals, especially all these peer-reviewed articles talking about balance. But that's what happens. We allow this chatter to start taking place within our ego minds, and maybe not even aware that it's happening, and that can distract you from all kinds of stuff. Now, the moment you become aware of it, well, awareness is half the battle right there. Or maybe it's more than half the battle, because you can't really do anything until you're aware. So once you become aware of it, now you can decide, oh, look at that. I can hear that voice again. It's judging me. Oh, I wonder why it's judging me. You got to get curious, start talking back to it like a little child. What's up, honey? What's the problem? What's the challenge? What's going on? Well, you're not paying attention to me. Oh, okay. So what is it you want me to hear that I haven't been paying attention to? And when you have a conversation with your ego mind, I have found anyway, it just tends to quiet down on its own. It's kind of like a kid having a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want the temper tantrum to continue, but you do want to find a way to give that child the opportunity of being heard. And that in itself is enough to lower the energy level and to start coming back to some rationality, if you like, or at least to some calmness.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and there's this, for me, there was a building or rebuilding, reestablishing trust between these two divine aspects of myself. I had pushed aside that divine feminine because it was weak. That's what I was told growing up. Don't be a crybaby. You're too sensitive. You're not the creative one. All of these things squish that divine feminine energy. And when I started recognizing that aspect of myself and inviting her to be more present, she's just like, I don't trust you. I don't think so. And it's same thing with talking to a voice. There's talking to that divine aspect of yourself, and in my case, myself. And I had to do a lot of work with her to get her to trust me. It's just like another inner child, another little voice of, it's safe. I hear you now. I welcome you now. And I really apologize for ignoring you all these years. It wasn't intentional, but I honor that I did it.
Yeah.
And that's when things started changing for me. Like you said, awareness.
Yep. And also, I think taking responsibility for our choices. And that's a big one. A lot of people like to say, well, I had no choice. I was forced into it. I'm sorry. You cannot fall back on that rubric. The truth is, even if you were coerced, misled, misguided, whatever, by some other external force, you still made the choice. The choice was yours. And every consequence that came from that choice was your responsibility. You may not like to take that and own it, but I'll tell you, the fastest way to self-acceptance is to just simply say, yep, you're right. I made these choices. I chose in my early life to behave like an angry asshole. I would never have admitted it back then. I would have denied it to the death. But now, today, because I know the truth of who I really am, I can see, yep, I absolutely did that. And it was part of my growth process, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I can now look at my life and I can say, okay, in the course of being that angry asshole, were there people who got hurt as a result of my actions? And I can go back and I can make amends to those people. They may not want to forgive me. They may not like me. They may only remember me in that way. But that is my choice. Again, I can't change what happened, but I can certainly make amends for my choices and the consequences that they created.
Yep, absolutely. And I think for me, forgiving myself was one of the biggest things. Again, that's when my health started coming back, because I wasn't carrying that woulda, shoulda, coulda. I was beating myself up for making the wrong choices, all that whole big bucket of stuff. And forgiving myself for doing that and seeing those decision points, like you mentioned. I'm like, oh, you know what? I had an opportunity here to make a different choice and I didn't, which means I made a choice to do something else. So,
that's right.
Moving on.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I have discovered about choice, maybe you've seen this too, is Every choice is a one-time action. You cannot unchoose something. You can't change your choice. What you can do in the next moment is make a new choice that hopefully will repair any damage caused by the previous choice. That you can do. But every choice it's permanent. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. As soon as that stone leaves your hand, that's it. It's going to have whatever impact it has, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. You can't unthrow the stone. So it's really important, I think, when you take responsibility for your choices, to say, yep, I made that choice, and I see that it created this consequence. This consequence isn't exactly what I want in my life. This is not who I am. I am choosing now to go and make a correction to that consequence. Yep. Because I am a person of integrity. Now, the other thing you mentioned was forgiving yourself. I think that's absolutely crucial. And I found, this might be true for other people too, I found first I had to learn compassion. I had to learn how to be compassionate towards other people. Once I understood this idea of compassion, only then was I able to start directing this compassion to myself. And it was at that point that I started recognizing, I haven't forgiven myself. It's time for me to do that too. It was easier for me to forgive other people and have compassion for them than it was for me to forgive myself and have compassion for myself. So I'm not saying that this is true for all people, but I know it was true for me. And, your mileage may vary.
Exactly. And I do think as humans, it's easier for us to forgive other people. We hold ourselves to a different standard, which I have no idea why, but it's been my experience. I've seen it in clients. You just mentioned it. So I do think that there's a trend going on there. And to what extent that happens, that's where the choice comes in. We can continue to evaluate ourselves or put ourselves down, but all that does is just hold down the growth. It stunts us as humans. Whereas forgiveness, whether it's forgiving somebody else, one of my early teachers, and I cannot remember which one it was, always used to say, forgiveness is a return of energy to yourself.
Right.
And I think whether you're forgiving somebody outside, you're forgiving an experience, a choice, yourself, God. I've had many discussions with God about some of my life experiences, and there was some forgiveness work that I had to do along the way with that.
Right.
But I do always feel lifted up more. I feel more energy. I feel more clarity. The vision of where I'm going and how I can show up or want to show up in the world is so much clearer when I'm not tripping over that big stone of, the victim. Because I think a lot of, for me personally, a lot of the way the forgiveness stuff shows up is somebody did me wrong, which, like you said earlier, it was a choice, Carolyn.
So let's go back to the subject of intuition now and talk a little bit about how can I learn to tap into my intuition? If maybe I already know how to do it and I don't, but I'm just saying, for someone who's confused about this whole idea, what advice do you offer to help someone become more in tune with their intuition and to become more trusting of the messages that they receive through their intuition?
Well, that is a big subject, my friend, but I'll do some highlights on it. So as I mentioned before, there's 4 main ways that we interact with intuition, or intuition interacts with us. It's things that we see. So it might be, you notice something repetitively. It could be a number. It could be something. And numbers are energy. They have a resonance to them. A lot of times people will say, 1111. It's a divine entry number. So if you're noticing that, you're being invited to up level. You may have dreams. So it's just becoming more aware. And we all have the ability to do this, especially you, David. We all have this ability to know, because it's a discernment. It's a paying attention. And when I was going through my, I'm going to call it reawakening, I noticed that I could feel things and I could sense, I could have that gut knowingness really easily. So as I was going through the process, our teacher wanted us to focus on one sense at a time. And this is the way I teach now too. Focus on seeing something for a week. And then another week, focus on what are you hearing? Are you hearing a music refrain repeatedly? Are you hearing people repeatedly say something about water? You know, maybe you need to drink more water. Maybe you're drinking too much water. There's that discernment piece. What does the message mean for you? Or maybe it's going to rain for the next week and you need to get a job done outside. I mean, there's all permutations of this, but it's learning how to filter it through and marrying that logical energy with the intuitive piece that makes this so profound. And then there's, what do you sense when you first meet somebody? Do the little hairs on your arms stand up? That's giving you information. That's sensory information. That gut instinct. Maybe you get really excited. There's butterflies. There's anticipation. On the other hand, it could be you feel like you're going to be sick. So there's, an energy that goes out there, and just really focusing one aspect at a time and writing it all down, journaling. And, I really am an engineer, so I still own that aspect of myself. I don't write prose in my journal. I bullet point little ideas. So don't be overwhelmed or anything by the word journaling. It can be just a record keeping of those thoughts that come in. What did you see repeatedly? Did you see a butterfly 4 times in 1 week? That's transformation. That's complete conversion, metamorphosis. Or what are you hearing? And really allowing those changes to come through us and trust them and staying in your body. The body knows the answer. Your heart is the most intuitive muscle that you have. And your heart will say yes. It will expand when the answer is good for you. So use your heart as a barometer. You can use it as a measuring stick. Or it contracts. You feel like you really want to protect your heart. That means something isn't good for you. So you can even ask yes or no questions. Does this intuitive information I got mean X, Y, Z? And ask your heart. And your heart will tell you. And then you build the confidence to move forward and keep practicing. But the journal is one of the key things, because you can go back in time and say, I have been seeing this, or I have been proven right, or what my information was that I thought it was needed a slight, refinement.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a lot of good information there, and I really like this. One thing that I would like to say, though, and I think this is true for most people, when I just sit and meditate and I try and get myself out of my judgmental mind and just simply observe what's going on, what I notice is nothing really has any meaning at all. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at the entire universe, it just is. It has no meaning per se. And so you've got to be really careful. I noticed you mentioned the word transformation in relation to butterfly. And a lot of people would agree that that's what butterfly means. But remember, this whole process, the whole purpose of intuition is to say, what does this mean for me right now?
Yep.
Not what does it mean because, Carolyn called it transformation. Oh, there's got to be some transformation in my life. Not necessarily. It might be the case, but please keep yourself open whatever message you're getting, however it's arriving to you. And I see Wendy has mentioned about the awareness of numbers like 111 and 4 ones. And she's been seeing these a lot over the last few weeks. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you what that means. Neither is Carolyn, but it has some meaning for you personally because you're the one having that experience. Okay. So let's be really careful about this. And, that's why, as much as I love reading books, I'm nervous about going to a book as a source of information. Well, I just ran into a deer today, not necessarily running over it or anything. What does that mean? Let me see what this book says. Well, yeah, this book is the author's perspective, right?
Mhm.
So really be careful about that. When
Yep.
you're going to trust your intuition, trust it to bring you the entire truth, the entire story as it needs to be for you.
Yeah,
That's what's really important.
It is really important. And thanks for clarifying that, because there is a lot of like collective knowledge or common areas that can fall into. But that specific information, I like to call it your intuitive vocabulary. It's the
Right.
way you speak. It's the way you receive information. And I'll give a quick example of that so people can understand what it means in my perspective. Yellow roses, if you look them up in the flower book, are generally associated with friendship. My dad gave my mom yellow roses on their first date. Yellow roses, and every anniversary, every event, all the way through their life together. So yellow roses to me became to symbolize a long-term marriage, a marriage that was not easy, a choice to stay together and work through a lot of difficulties. So there was a very distinct energy around yellow roses when I would see them. And when I was doing a lot of readings back in the day, they would show up when there was a challenge in a marriage.
Right.
Because it's a choice point. So it was a very distinct energy for me with that symbol, which was very different from somebody else's perspective. So yeah, use your own filter. Absolutely.
Right. And the other thing that I think is just really important, and I'm glad I thought of this now, is what it means today is not necessarily what it meant last week.
Ooh, yeah.
And you gave an example, I think, of that. You were talking about if water is showing up in your awareness. It could be that rain is coming, like you said, or it could be that, I need to go swimming. Or maybe I need to drink more water. The fact is, it could be that just it's coming into your awareness. Don't even judge it. Just simply say, thank you for coming into my awareness. I know that the meaning will become clear because I trust my intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can always ask for more information.
Right.
You can always say, okay, I am aware. And that's one of the things that is so key to this process. It's universal, is acknowledging that you saw the sign, that you're feeling it in your body. Okay, something's coming up around water. What else do I need to know? Simple.
That's a great question. Yeah. That's a great
what else
question.
do I need to know? Or just, maybe asking those yes or no questions of, do I need to drink more water? No. Okay. Can you show me more information on what is important about water for me right now? So, taking that information and getting curious. I think curiosity is such a beautiful human trait, and it's like childlike. There's no expectation. You just ask questions and learn along the way.
Right. Yeah, I think this is really important. And this process of trusting the intuition means asking the right questions. I really like open-ended questions. I love that question. What else do I need to know? That's a great question. But for example, okay, water has come up into my awareness. I'm just going to use that example.
Yeah.
Is there something else? Now, maybe the next thing I see is an umbrella.
Right. Yeah.
So now that's one possible interpretation. Water and umbrella. I guess I can expect some rain. So maybe I need to take an umbrella with me, or as you said, do this chore before the rain starts. Or maybe if I ask the question, what else is there that my intuition wants to bring to me? And the next thing I see is a teapot. This is interesting. Now it's more confusing because it's not just water, it's water and a teapot that have come together. Does that mean I should have some tea, some herbal tea, some cold tea, some iced tea? What does it mean? You can interpret that in pretty much any way you like. And if you're still not clear, say, okay, I still don't get it. Ask for something more.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll see an ice cube show up. I don't know.
Yeah. When I was first starting this, I owned my dog walking business, and I had this, I had a rate sheet. So everything was normally really straightforward. Well, I had this one client that had 8 animals. Well, the rate sheet was not going to work for that. So, and I wanted to be fair to her and fair to me. So I just said, okay, tell me how much I should charge her. Make it clear and make it redundant. Now, I was driving down the highway. So within 2 minutes, I saw exit 33, a car with the number 33 pulled in front of me. This big truck went by that had a huge number 33 on it. And there was something way off in the distance that I don't remember at this point in time that had a big 33 on it. So I'm like, oh, $33 per visit. And then I did some analysis, because you don't just intuitively follow things. 33 was a reasonable number for how long it was going to take us to care for all those animals. And the client was thrilled. So, ask for it to be shown to you multiple times, and to be really, really clear, and to be quick. You don't want to be sitting around for days waiting for the answers.
Right.
So those are my 3 things right there.
Yeah. And it's amazing, the universe responds. Well, the universe
Absolutely.
does respond instantaneously to any request you have.
Yes.
You may not see the response, however, if you're not paying attention.
If you're not paying
So
attention.
this is where awareness really, really makes the huge difference. And you talked about discernment before. Is this just a piece of random information, or is there something of value here that I should be paying attention to? That's a great question to ask yourself. Because you're going to see the number 33 show up in other contexts that have nothing to do with this request for information.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to, if you're not acknowledging what you see and spending the time to evaluate it deeper, you're either going to get flooded with messages because the universe is trying to get your attention, or you're going to miss that opportunity for the additional data, because intuition is data.
Of course. Yeah. It's really amazing to me. So let's talk now a little bit about you've already given a couple of really powerful practical tools for building this trust in intuition. Can you talk a little bit more about specific things people can do to achieve the balance and alignment between the intuition and the rational mind?
Yes. So one of the most powerful things for me was kind of an evaluation of where my energy is peak in, like, the intuitive receiving, the creativity aspect of my life, and when I am better at that producing energy. And for me, late morning to early afternoon, it's when I'm most creative. So that's when I'm going to schedule my awareness. I may go outside and see what's going on in my yard to get ideas. I'm going to open myself up. Late afternoon is when I'm going to be doing my posting, the tactical piece of the posting, not the creative piece, the tactical piece. So, or it's when I'm going to be, using QuickBooks to balance the energy, when I do payroll for the pet business. It's that implementation energy. So paying attention to when you feel more in flow with those different energies is one way that it's just going to support you. And being conscious about moving from one energy to the other. You know, there's a lot of school of thoughts of setting timers and standing up, or taking a break. A lot of times what I will do is just literally stand up, shake myself out. So I'm like, okay, I'm moving into something else. But it's an awareness, it's a consciousness, there's the body component of it too. Like you're literally shifting from one thing to the next. The journaling that I mentioned has been key for me, and has been key for a lot of my clients. You forget, the human mind, you get all this information and you think you're going to remember it, but you don't. So, a dream journal by your bed so that you can, even if it's just the feelings that you had in your dream, write them down real quick and go back to sleep if you have to, or in the morning when you first wake up, tracking what you see. Those are the really big things. Being in your body. I've already talked about it, but it really is a key component, feeling your feet on the ground, being straight in your body, opening up this channel, this connection, heaven and earth. It just helps you have greater awareness.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of journaling. I talk about it a lot in the things that I do. I think the secret, in my opinion, the secret to journaling, and you kind of touched on this, it's not necessarily writing down the data about whatever it is. That might be important for you. I don't know. But what's really important, I think, is writing down the feelings you were having, the thoughts you were having, all of that stuff that was going on, peripheral to the actual data. That's the stuff that really helps you to learn more about who you really are, and you could probably interpret some of this as, oh, I see, this is my typical reaction to this kind of situation, and you may not notice that right away until you start writing it down. And writing down the feelings, writing down the energy that you were experiencing. That's really, really important, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The energies or feelings are just energies. They're information. There's a reason you might feel apprehensive. There's a reason that you feel joy. Write it down. And then you can piece it all together, the puzzle that we talked about in the beginning. I think that's one of the really profound aspects of this whole journey to trusting your intuition, is having all of these little bits and pieces. And sometimes it might take 6 months for the whole story to come out, but you're going to see that pattern of growth and connection and understanding and expansion as you move forward and you take a look at everything. It's really, really amazing. And I want to circle back really quickly to try to isolate those senses. Pay attention to what you see for a week or a day, whatever works for you. Then what do you hear? What do you sense? And what do you just know? And, and write them down. And everybody's going to receive them slightly differently. Everybody's going to have one or two that's easier. But when you practice, intuition is like a muscle. When you practice what you see and receive and acknowledge, it's going to become easier to you. And the same thing with all the other senses. No matter which one your strength is, I would say start with the one that you're the least comfortable with and allow it to, build up a little bustle, build up a little credibility for you, and have fun with it.
Right. Yeah. And all of this also presupposes that you don't have to give up your reasoning, your rational mind. You don't have to sacrifice that part of you. You can certainly integrate them together and let them work as a team.
Yeah. It's just more information. That's the way I look at it. We've got our logic, our analysis, our paradigms, what we have been taught, all of that beautiful information. Our brains are just so powerful. And then we've got all of this other intuitive information. And when you pull it together, you're double, tripling, whatever, expanding, what information is available to us. It doesn't take away anything. We need all aspects of us.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I imagining, okay, I'm in a situation right now and my intuition is telling me that I have to go to this place, wherever it is. Well, okay, now what are you going to do? Until we learn how to teleport ourselves across, vast distances or whatever, we probably have to figure out, I'm going to have to go out into my car, drive up this hill, take this right over here, go up the mountain. And then when I get there, I can kind of drop all the rational stuff and get back into my essence or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to make a plan. You have to make some choices. All of this stuff requires the thinking, logical mind. So embrace it. Use it. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely is. And Wendy, glad that you're learning to keep your journal close by.
Yeah,
I use my note app on my phone sometimes when I don't have, a piece of paper. Or sometimes even a voice memo. Just works to keep that thought right there.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the time here. I want to make sure that I give you a chance to tell people about any offers that you might have that could help them with this process. We'll do that first.
Thank you. So right now I have opened up my schedule for a few new coaching clients. I really love to work one-to-one with people and help them deepen what their intuition is telling them, how they're recognizing what those signs are, how they can use it to provide an easier flow in their life, and the trust aspect too. So that is what I've got going on right now, and you can find more information at carolynmcgee.com.
Right, that's your main website, right?
Yep,
and it's spelled just like it sounds, carolynmcgee.com. So
yes, it is. Pretty simple.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here again, Carolyn. It's been a total pleasure. Do you have any final words you'd like to share before I begin wrapping up?
Trust yourself. Your heart really does know the answer, and you just trust yourself.
Right. That's a powerful thing to learn. Self-trust. And trust your intuition as well, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you again, Carolyn. It's been an absolutely fabulous conversation. Lots of great material here for people to learn from. And I'm so delighted we had the chance to reconnect and do this episode together. For all of you who are watching, I want to thank you for being here in person. And also for those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for doing that. And just remember, you can find the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at MagnifEssence.com. That is MagnifEssence.com. And I look forward to seeing you over there. Now, before I close the door finally here, I'd like to remind everybody about what I think is a beautiful life mastery mantra, something that I do every single day as part of my meditation practice. It's a simple little 3 sentences that you can take on and try for yourself. It goes like this, real simple. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So thank you all, everyone. I wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey, and I'll see you next time on MagnifEssence in Motion. Bye-bye for now.